and you automatically qualify for the free $3,000 federal grant. Choose yours right away. They're going fast. Open 2 to 7 daily. Phone 467-1436.
In the land of Dairy Queen, we treat you right.
The Double Burger, made with the right kind of beef, tender and juicy. 2 sizzling patties, the right kind of processed cheddar cheese, rich and flavorful. Crisp green lettuce and a red ripe tomato. The Double Burger with processed cheddar cheese, lettuce, and tomato. Come on and taste what we mean.
In the land of Dairy Queen, we treat you right. PCTV, we're giving it all we got.
Good morning. One of the major financial problems facing our beloved social credit government in British Columbia is how to cut down health costs. Something like $2.4 billion a year, and there ain't no more money. Much depends on what Madame Bejan does. But just hold it a little bit. I have a program to offer you this morning on a walkabout, which is a brand kind of new development in British Columbia, where a credit union, CUNC, which runs its own medical health plans of $100 million a year, has opened the first salaried doctor clinic, I think, in British Columbia. Now, the average wage for doctors in BC is around 125,000, 135,000 gross in BC. You're going to go now to a clinic, Mount Pleasant Clinic on the east side of Vancouver, where David Schreck will tell you what the doctors are paid there.
The payoff that's well quantified is you can save 40%, a 40% reduction in hospital cost. In this province, if this model existed throughout the province, it would reduce the hospital bill by over $400 million.
Oh, that's a terrible. We're not quite sure about that, but the doctors in the clinic themselves, there's only one at the moment, is on a salary of $75,000 a year, and 26 doctors applied for the job when it was advertised a few months back. That's one topic we're going to cover in a walkabout this morning. Now, there's a big story brewing across the nation on the question of meat inspection. And the Public Services Alliance of Canada is making very strong allegations that the federal government is going to cut down on meat inspections so that quantities, perhaps even large quantities of meat, will not be properly inspected in federal plants, and that you may get tainted meat on your table. Now, the two men who are going to tell us about that are Mr. Fred Coates, who's national president of the Agricultural Union of the P.S.A.C., and Albert S. Burke, who is executive vice president of the P.S.A.C. itself. Also on the program this morning, we're going to look at this strange and somewhat worrying story about the bills which may be sent out again to those who are involuntarily committed to mental institutions in British Columbia. There was a recent court case which stopped the billing, but it would seem the government is going to start the billing again. And to explain that to us this morning is a lawyer from the Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Program, Gerald Green, acting on behalf of the Mental Patients Societies. But first we'll do the walkabout at BC's first salaried doctor clinic in the province. I'm standing outside a place called Mount Pleasant Health Center, a medical clinic. Now, I'm here for a reason, because inside there is a doctor who is on salary, $75,000 a year. And this is a big change, and it's the first clinic of its kind in British Columbia. One of the major problems facing the social credit government today is the fact that payments to doctors have doubled since 79-80. They're on about $300 million a year. That's the doctors themselves for the fee-for-service. $300 million in 79-80, and for 83-84, they're close to $650 million. And social credit is wondering how it can cap, put a limit on the doctor's earnings, because fee-for-service, if the utilization is increased, the bill to doctors is unlimited. Now, we all want the best care we can get, that we can afford, and we all want to make quite sure that the doctor is there when we want him. But you can bet your bottom dollar that even the social credit government is looking at how this place will operate as a medical clinic with salaried doctors who don't have their own overhead. Now, we're going to find out inside here who runs this clinic, why it was set up, what kind of a success it is, and if it's liable to explode into a chain of such clinics in British Columbia. Right, let's go in. And guess who's here? Two guesses. David Schreck.
Hi, Jack.
Who runs the proper title, David?
CUNC Health Services Society.
Now, when did you open this clinic?
It was sometime in April of 1982.
And why, your doctor here is on salary, is
That's
that
right,
correct?
he's on salary. We were in a fight with, in 1981, the doctors were threatening to extra bill in British Columbia. CUNC put about $100,000 into a campaign to stop extra billing in British Columbia. We were successful. But when we started looking at it, we thought, why should we put all this effort into protecting piecework? Why don't we do something constructive and provide an alternative?
Now, the only place I can think of with staff clinics and staff salaries was in Saskatchewan.
They have some in almost every province in the country now. Ontario has endorsed the principle as official policy. It has about 26 going. Quebec has quite a few going.
This is virtually the first in British Columbia.
The first of its type. There were a few experimented with in the early 70s, but this is truly unique, and
All
it's
right.
wholly sponsored by CUNC. We are not begging money from government.
In fact, you're subsidizing it at the moment, is that correct?
CUNC's put $500,000 into this.
All right, question. How much does your doctor get paid?
Well, the medical director, the first physician, $75,000 plus benefits.
Did you advertise this as a job vacancy?
Yes, we did. We advertised it. We ran an ad in the Sun in the Province, had 26 applications. We referred the applicants to Touche Ross, the consultants who pre-screened them for us.
And
We
you-
interviewed a short list, selected Dr. Gard.
Selected Dr. Gard, Dr. Michael Gard.
That's right.
You've only got the one doctor who is also the medical director at the moment.
We are currently in the process of interviewing candidates for a second position that we've posted, and we expect to have the second physician on staff within the next month
Now,
or two.
the average gross of a doctor in British Columbia runs around, I forget the figures, $125,000, $130,000.
Something like that, right?
Then he has his expenses off,
That's right.
right? So therefore, $75,000 for a doctor as your medical director would probably equal something over $100,000 on a medical services plan.
I would think so.
Well, look, let's take a walk down here. Come on, we'll see the facilities later, but there's
Okay.
a couple of points I want to ask you particularly.
One of the things we tried to do is to equip it like any group practice you'd find anywhere in the city.
What's the total capacity you have for doctors in here if you fully staff it?
We have 4 physician offices, and we have 5 examining rooms. We have an ambulatory surgery, small.
We'll have a quick
small
look at some
lab.
of the facilities later. But in fact, you're not that busy yet.
Well, we're building a patient roster. I have to admit, we're a little embarrassed this afternoon that there are some patients, and we'll have to steer you around them.
That's no problem.
Certainly in April and May, things were very slow. It's building up now. It's at the point where we can add a second physician.
But let me understand this. Now, you're paying a medical director, and you will pay your subsequent doctors. Did I ask you how much your ordinary clinicians would get?
The recruiting range that we're looking at for the second physician is between 50 and 60,000.
So can you collect from MSP on as CUNC?
Just like any medical clinic would, we bill through to medical services plan. See, what happens is CUNC acts as a buffer between medical services
but
plan
I mean,
piecework
your doctor
and the
treats
salaried
me.
practice. Our doctor's income, in fact, any of the people who work in the center, their income is not affected by what they do to you. And that's what's different between that and piecework.
Yeah, again, one hates to point things out directly, but if I'm making, say, 60,000 as one of the clinical doctors here eventually, I'll just pay my income tax and that, and I will have no overhead whatsoever.
That's right. No, that's a salary just like any other working
Like
person
any
has
other
a salary.
working person. Yeah, seems admirable in many ways, but what's the difference between this place, really, and a group of doctors who own a building? I mean, put it in words of one syllable, which you're noted for. But what is the difference?
We've eliminated the piecework incentive. If we have a hypochondriac in here, our doctor will tell them to go away. In a piecework place, they can make a fortune out of them, calling them back every day.
That's not fair, David. There are good doctors who don't do that. You know that as well as I do.
What the evidence shows, and there's solid evidence that shows you get a 40% reduction in hospital utilization if you have doctors on salary rather than on piecework. The facts are less unnecessary work of all types is done if the physician is paid a salary rather than piecework.
But don't give me that, Jazz, because even if I come here and you don't have the equipment here to give me the test, you're going to do what the other doctors do and send me away for a whole raft of tests paid for by medical services
Be
plan.
referred wherever's necessary.
Right.
However, one of the differences is we do have a lot of equipment here that an average practice would not. And that, you see, the reason we're doing this is we want to save Medicare, and we want to show that there are ways to be efficient and save money without having all of these crazy user fees, simply by organizing medical practice
But not
differently.
everybody's like the COC and's got a couple of $100,000 to subsidize the building and subsidize the operation
Well,
until it stands on its own feet, on fee for service.
Well, that's right. CUNC has a 15 to 20-year plan to set up clinics like this all over the province. There are other organizations that could do it. Government could do some of them.
Well, we're supposed to be looking around too. I see here a laboratory. Is it safe to go in?
Jack, this is our lab. It does what are called Class 1 lab procedures.
And Jean, you're the nurse administrator here.
Yes, I am. Pleased to meet you.
Now, what kind of facilities do you have in the way of lab procedures or whatnot?
Well, we can do a little more tests than you can in the average doctor's office. For instance, in here we can do a very complicated eye testing. We can do a pulmonary function test. We can also do an ECG in this room.
And I see you've got some occupational health stuff too, don't you?
Yes, we can do audio testing for noise pollution in industry. And we have a treatment room where we can do minor lacerations and
Now, what
minor
about
surgery.
if I want to come to this clinic? Do I have to phone up, make an appointment, and all the rest of that?
No, you can walk in and get treatment.
On my BC medical card. What if
Yes,
I
you
don't
can.
have a BC medical card?
We don't turn any patients away.
What about your hours, though? You've only got the one doctor at this moment, have you not?
We have one doctor just now, but we do have facilities to take on 4 doctors. And our hours at the moment are 6 days a week. That's all day Saturday, every week. We have 2 late openings till 8 p.m. at night, and we will be open eventually every evening till 8 p.m.
That seems a bit much because you've got a fairly small staff at the moment. Can you manage that?
When we run full capacity, we will have plenty of staff.
Oh, you're looking forward to the days, but you
Yes,
are open at the
At the
moment.
moment, we are open. And
You're
2
not
days a
an
week.
emergency ward or anything, are
No,
you,
not
Jane?
at all.
Nothing like that.
Not
Let's
at
go
all.
back out and find David Schreck. I'll tell you what now I'd like to do, David Schreck. I'd like to meet your medical director,
All right, it's Dr. Michael Gard. Michael?
Dr.
Webster.
Gard. Jack Webster.
Hello, Jack.
Tell me, doctor, do you feel like a pioneer?
Yes, I suppose I do in a sense, although I must say it's a very nice setup, and I think really what it amounts to is that David Scheck has given me the opportunity to practice, to set up a general practice that I think can be absolutely ideal.
You don't mind if I'm blunt, do you?
No, of course not.
You're getting 75,000 flat salary.
More or less, yeah, that's about it. Sure.
That's about it, okay. Would that be more or less, speaking on an average, if you had to pay your own overhead? You're still taxed heavily on $75,000, but are you better off than the average doctor? Or are you not getting anything like the amount of money of the average doctor if he's billing $200,000?
I think that the average doctor in Vancouver probably, I don't know, but I think that one does very well. If a doctor was going to be setting up in practice now, it would take him years and years to make the sort of money that I earn from day one.
Mm-hmm. But now here you are, you're in a salaried position in a clinic. All your overhead, you have no concern with overhead or office expenses or administration.
That's right.
Does it improve the quality of medicine, or does that not depend entirely on the caliber of the doctor?
I think it removes a lot of the financial constraints. I think that it doesn't necessarily improve the quality of medicine, no. But I think that fee-for-service, which I have enjoyed working in for 20 years, let me say, I'm not against it. But I think as you get an excess of doctors, then it becomes less and less relevant.
Mind you, you've got room for, what, a clinic with yourself and 3 other doctors?
Yes, that's right, yes.
And you anticipate when you are busy enough to expand that you'll get lots of applications?
From the doctors?
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, certainly.
Now, what about lab things and that? Do you do more in this kind of clinic than a doctor can do in his own private practice office, even if there are a group of doctors?
No, we do just what is called Category 1 laboratory facilities. In other words, the sort of laboratory investigations that any GP can do himself. Apart, of course, from the occupational health part, we have industrial.
Mind you, it's going to take
tests.
you time to build enough in the way of patients to employ another 3 doctors, is it not?
Yes, it is indeed.
That might be a good point if I ask David Schreck to come back in again. David, let's go over here and we'll set ourselves up to meet David. David, don't go away, doctor. Just stay here. David, you know, I know where you stand politically.
That's right.
And all the rest of it. And I want to know your motives behind this plan, your real motives. Is this a socialist plot to embarrass the fee-for-service doctors running this kind of salaried clinic?
It's a plot to save a lot of money and show that Medicare can work. You see, what happened was this concept of having salaried doctors was really pushed in the early 1970s by Richard Nixon, of all people, in the United States. Caught on in Ontario, there are 26 centers somewhat like this, different models, but with doctors on salary throughout Ontario, backed by the Conservative government in Ontario. In British Columbia, because it's NDP policy to have community health centers with salaried doctors, it's viewed as a socialist plot. The fact is, it's been pushed by conservatives elsewhere. It's good, sound economics. The payoff that's well quantified is you can save 40%, a 40% reduction in hospital cost. In this province, if this model existed throughout the province, it would reduce the hospital bill by over $400 million.
Oh, that's a terribly extravagant statement. Here we have this clinic with normal Category 1, Grade 1 lab facilities. And you're telling me that it's going to cut, this expanded would cut hospital admissions by 40%.
It's not a matter of just avoiding the shifting of the overhead. It's also a matter of you avoid all kinds of shifting and you eliminate the disincentives of piecework to do everything, whether it's necessary or not. I'm not saying why that happens, Jack. Okay, I'm not saying that piecework doctors do work that shouldn't be done. All I'm saying is that if you compare the 2 models, and the 2 models exist in the United States, the facts are you get that reduction.
Can you follow that up at all, doctor? I mean, 40% fewer hospital admissions. That's hard for me to swallow. Because of the disincentives of fee-for-service, which I know you don't want to knock, because you worked under it successfully for 20 years.
I'm really not too sure about the hospital admissions business. I haven't been into that. What I think is that it does offer an opportunity to practice primary care, to practice general practice more cheaply and more effectively. That's what I think about it.
And you think you can give more time to the patients? But even that, and here I'll go back to David Schreck, you tell me no subsidies from the government, correct?
That's right.
You
no
put how
subsidies.
much into this building?
Well, $200,000 on renovations. In the whole operation so far, we've put in...
From CUNC?
From CUNC.
With the approval of the Board of Directors?
Right, about $500,000 so far in all.
Yeah.
We expect to recoup that, all right?
Well, now, you can't with only one doctor going on at the moment.
We will have a second physician on board within a month or 2. That will put us in a break-even situation. We will have 3 or 4...
You can cover the operating costs and overhead with 2 doctors?
With 2 physicians.
Working all out?
No, working at about 80% of capacity. We will have 3 or 4 within another year. That will repay to CUNC the $500,000 that
You'll
we
give
put
the money
in it.
back to CUNC. Give the money back to CUNC.
We'll repay the loan that was
Right.
made by CUNC to set it up. We have a contract with Dr. Gard that states in the contract that if at any point more money is made in the center than it takes to cover operations and repay past debt, that excess will not go to CUNC. That excess will go to setting up more health centers, and that's what we plan to do.
Okay, one last question. How much money do you handle in CUNC a year in your dental plans and all your other wage protection plans? And
About $100 million a year.
so CUNC next door is a $100 million business.
That's right.
And you've had full cooperation from the government in setting this up.
We approached the government and advised them that we were going to do this,
And the college okays it too.
and the college approved it as well. We,
This is
we have had no roadblocks.
No roadblocks. I'll be back next year to see how you're doing.
Okay, Jack.
Thank you, David Schreck.
Thank you.
This is really a consumer story this morning. I've got two union officials here who are alleging that the federal government, in its cutbacks of meat inspection, could well be putting tainted meat and poultry in the stores for your consumption. Now, I don't know yet whether or not they're just on a fiddle to save jobs, or if they're genuinely concerned with the interests of the public and the health of the public. But I'll introduce them to you and we'll see if they can make their case. Here is Fred Coates, who's the head of the Agriculture Union of the P.S.A.C. And here is Albert Burke, who's executive vice president of the whole P.S.A.C. How many members you got altogether?
180,000.
What?
180,000
You're the
members.
biggest union in the country.
No, we're the third largest.
Third largest. And you're the head of the agricultural section of the P.S.A.C.
Yes, that's right.
I didn't know we had an agricultural union.
Better
Does this
believe it.
cover only meat inspectors?
No, we have approximately 8,000 members covering anybody employed by Agriculture Canada is in our union.
How dare you tell me and tell the rest of the nation as you're going on your propaganda trip that our government is so stupid and so short-sighted that they're going to open the door for tainted meat on our tables all across this country. Now, how can you possibly back up that statement?
Unfortunately, Jack, some things never change with our government. They appear to have gone bonkers in one more area, and it's agriculture.
Now, particularly in meat inspection, what are they doing?
Well, what they are attempting to do, historically, the federal meat inspection stamps, legends, labels have been under the very strict control of our federal meat inspectors. They're locked up every night in a cabinet, and then they are given out to the plant personnel to operate with during the day, but definitely under the very close supervision of the inspectors. Now, under this new FOIL program they're attempting to implement, these stamps will be taken away from the inspectors and given to the plant personnel to use whatever way they wish.
You're telling me that that's what it says, grade A, grade B, prime. What do these stamps say?
No, that is the grading stamps, Jack. This is to the Canada approved. This is to pertaining to the wholesomeness of the product which the consumer will get at the marketplace.
And are you suggesting that they're going to take away these stamps from the meat inspectors and give them to plant managers?
They already have. This is the unfortunate part. While we're talking,
Is he telling me the truth?
Oh, he's telling you the absolute truth, and this is why the union, we represent the inspectors, and as you know, they're federal employees. They cannot come here and tell you that, or they would be fired. You can recall Neil Fraser case.
Right.
So as a union, we're coming up front and telling you that that stamp will be used by the employees of the plant owners. So when you're getting meat that says Canada approved, that is not true.
But not on all occasions.
No, not on all
All right,
occasions.
what does FOIL, this, what do you call these things, acronym, what does FOIL mean?
Well, that refers to the frequency of inspection, the level of the inspection that will be applied. And what it means from now on, you may have a government inspector may have 5 or 6 plants, and he or she will have to rotate from one to the other, and there's going to be, that may be for 1 hour a week they may get to a plant, or 2 hours a week. The remainder of the time that plant will be operating without the service of an inspector. And I'm talking about the processing end of that plant.
You're not talking about the killing end of that
No,
plant.
I want to make it clear, we're talking about the processing where the meat is actually processed, packaged, and put out for the consumer.
Okay, FOIL means the frequency of inspection level. How much has the inspection level been cut in the plants where they're now implementing this across the country?
Very drastically, Jack. All throughout BC, the Agriculture Canada Veterinary Inspection Operations Branch say that in British Columbia it's 100% in place now at this time.
Now, what does that mean? Now, one thing I want to get clear. He said processing.
Yes.
Are you people still inspecting every carcass that's killed for processing?
Yes, at the present time, there is the slaughter operation still has full-time inspection, but the FOIL program, you can be assured that will be the next step down the road. If they get it in place in the processing, it's going to go into the slaughter operation too.
Right at the moment, therefore, slaughter operations are 100% inspected by meat inspectors who are a member of your union.
Yes, in the plants, the inspection, that is the case. You have veterinarians there, and you have our inspectors there doing that.
All right, now what about the process? What is a processing plant? What does a processing plant handle, to keep it simple for me?
Well, processing is the next step down the road from the slaughter. Most of the large plants are a combination type slaughter processing. And then there is, of course, plants such as you have here in Vancouver, Fletcher's Limited, which are a straight processing operation. They have their kills elsewhere. I believe in Alberta they have a slaughter operation. Bring the product in here for processing.
But we have, by and large, total faith in our meat inspection in this country, do we not?
Up till now.
Do we not?
Yes, I sincerely hope so.
And we've had inspection from slaughter to processing since when? The 1900s?
Oh, at least, yes.
All right, now, you're telling me that we're not a poultry plant where they're processing poultry after they've been killed will only have perhaps infrequent inspection.
Yes, well, that's what's concerning us. That's exactly it. And poultry and other meats, any meat product is a very dangerous food item to be playing around with you. And our inspectors
Are we talking about packaged meats too?
Yes.
Packaged meats, all that packaged stuff.
Yes, definitely.
Are we talking about hot dogs?
Yes.
What else are we talking about? I mean, to get it down to our level.
Well, I could say everything but the squeal from the hog is what we're talking about. Anything processed from a carcass.
We're talking about bacon.
Definitely.
Yes.
We're talking about poultry. We're talking about sausage. We're
Yes.
talking about hot dogs.
Hamburger patties for your drive-ins.
All right. When did the full-time inspection stop in these processing plants?
The first directive came out on October '82, and at that time when we were made aware of we expressed our concerns to the Veterinary Director General and at the Deputy Minister level. We have had meetings with these individuals ongoing in the past year.
All right, what's the object? Is it to cut your jobs out? Is that the object, gentlemen?
No, we've been assured that there will be no jobs loss on this. And another smokescreen that's concerned us, Jack, is that they're throwing in there that we're concerned over the loss of overtime. Our union has been fighting for years to cut down on the amount of overtime. We've filed grievances on it. We've lost them at the adjudication level, telling us that our people are forced to work overtime. That is not the case at all. We've been told there's no job loss. We're not concerned about overtime. What we're concerned about is that there's going to be attendant meat going on the market, and our inspectors, our members, are going to be blamed.
It doesn't make an awful lot of sense now. Can you confirm, of course you can, that under this lesser level of inspection and processing plants, which you anticipate may be extended to slaughter plants,
We already have the documentation.
you have lost no jobs?
No,
No jobs?
no.
And are you going to lose any jobs?
No, we don't see where we're going to lose jobs on this thing.
So therefore you're out on a public education that there's a possibility. Why are they doing it? But tell me that after the break. Well, these two officials of P.S.A.C. have told us that their jobs are not threatened, there will be no layoffs, but that the government, the Department of
Agriculture?
has already implemented a cutback in processed meat inspections all across the country, and that they expected to come into the slaughtering area too. Why, in the name of all that's common sense, therefore, gentlemen, is the government doing this?
Well, we've been told by the Veterinary Director General in Ottawa that they have received complaints from the Meatpackers Council and large meatpacking companies that they believe that our federal meat inspectors are over-inspecting the meat products. And our reaction to that is, how the heck can you over-inspect something as critical as a meat product? It's
You're
ridiculous.
telling me that the big packers across the country are lobbying the government to get the inspectors off their backs?
Well, in a lot of cases, yes, that's the case, unfortunately. But to be totally honest with you, there are some large ones and some small ones that want the inspection there. They want it maintained at a level that has been in the past. They're concerned over the consumer obviously losing faith in the product, which they're going to, and it's going to hurt the industry. Why it's being done is they're being lobbied by certain groups, obviously, to get the inspector out of there. And we've got problems right now maintaining a good, decent level of inspection with our inspectors in that plant. God help it when they're out of there.
You're not asking for more jobs or anything?
No.
Have you any specific reports from management on, I don't want the plant identified in any way, shape or form, on what can happen in a bad plant?
Yes, definitely. We have one in the your region out here in
British Columbia.
Victoria, BC.
And this is a memorandum from Agriculture Canada to certain people.
That's right.
And who wrote this memorandum? Was it one of your people?
No, it was the veterinarian in charge
The veterinarian in charge?
of the plant.
And he says that he's complaining about the file system because of these 7 points. Read the 7
That's
points to me.
First point that he is complaining about, which are documented incidents: 1, plant employee urinating on floor of packaging room. 2, plant employees filling a chill tank of ice slush to dump one of their fellow employees in. 3, the superintendent instructing an employee to package condemned material. 4, many incidents regarding improper chilling of poultry. 5, many incidents of sour poultry resulting from item 4. 6, no icing of product 3 hours after operations finished. 7, spearing of live fowl with pitchforks.
Well, if these conditions had existed, why didn't they come to the surface before and action taken? Or can you tell me if action was taken?
Actually, Jack, I received a copy of this letter on my desk in Ottawa. I immediately took the letter over to the department to a meeting I was holding with the Veterinary Director General, Dr. Ivan Reed, and the Deputy Minister, J.P. Connell. I asked these two principals of the department if they had had any complaints from other than inspectors, from our people, about the concerns of this program. And Dr. Reed said, Fred, we have nothing but positive comments, nothing but positive. Excuse me. I then asked him if he had anything in writing from management people such as veterinarians in charge. He said no, he did not. I then read this letter to him and asked him for his comments. The only comment was from the Deputy Minister after a long pause: everybody's entitled to their own opinion. That is the type of reaction we're getting.
So you don't think you've had an investigation of that?
Yes, I believe we have. The word that I have...
Never mind the word, but there is some kind of investigation. If it comes to a finite end, let me know. Now, the Consumers Association of Canada okayed this program at some stage, did they not?
It's the Ontario section of it.
Ontario section.
The Alberta one is supporting our stand. They're very, very concerned. I mean, they've made statements on it. The Ontario section have come out and said that they were supporting it. Since that time, we've outlined to them why we were concerned. Now they've requested to meet with the union on the 20th of this month to discuss it. They are now becoming concerned. So we sincerely hope that, I'm surprised though, to be honest with you, they are there to protect the consumer, and they're basing their findings strictly on what they've heard from the department and not from the other side at all.
So you urge the Consumers Association to rise up in anger, do you?
Well, I sincerely hope so, because this program, we have no doubt, we represent the inspectors, we know that there cannot be a quality level of inspection maintained under this program. There's no way. They tried it in the States and Reagan's government backed off. They will not put it in down there. It's not good enough for them. Why the hell should it be good enough for Canadians?
You mean Reagan rejected it? Or Reagan tried it?
Under pressure. Under pressure, he tried. He tried to get it in.
Let me try and destroy your case if I can at all. Many meat inspectors have you got in the country?
1,500 approximately.
How much overtime did you work last year?
We talked to a fellow, I didn't work any. We talked to a fellow last week. He worked 1.5 hour last month. This was in Calgary, one of the people involved in this program.
In other words, you're not gouging them for overtime?
Not a bit.
Well,
no.
in areas, Jack, where there is a fair amount of overtime paid, our members have screamed. Well, like I said before, we challenged it, we grieved it, and we're told they're forced to work overtime. They don't want it.
All right, give me an estimate of the percentage. Well, and they're going to institute spot checks instead of... Normally, did an inspector stand at the end of the line or in the plant and look at every piece of meat if he could?
Yes, over the years there has been small plants where an inspector would drop in.
You're talking about big plants?
Yes, that's the big processing, and also the small ones. It's the whole shooting match that we're talking about. But what has happened is that the key is the taking away of the control of the Canada-approved stamps from the inspector. It's going to deteriorate the program to an uncontrollable and a very treacherous level.
First of all, you've got stamps in slaughter. What are the stamps used in slaughter?
Well, that is your Canada-approved stamps.
But that's still done by inspectors?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they have grades of meat in that, don't they? You
That's
grade
your
the meat.
graders,
That's
yeah.
different inspectors. There are inspectors who do the grading as well. They're trained in that. And this is, I think, is a key area. What we're concerned over here, and I don't see how anybody can even argue the point, the fact that the employee who now is going to be held responsible for stamping that meat is also in a conflict of interest. And we're not saying that the employee is not trying to be honest, but if they're told by their supervisor to stamp
that meat
that's contaminated, and either you stamp it or you're fired, what the hell is that employee going to do? And I asked you the same thing, and put it in reverse with an inspector. If an inspector stamps contaminated meat, they would be fired for doing that because they're there to protect the public. And it's putting the employee in a conflict of interest. There's no doubt about it.
And you're telling me the actual stamps, when you're not there, will be in possession of the plant ownership?
Exactly.
The keys and the stamps, and they can rush through and stamp everything before you get back.
Yeah, as we said.
And the thing that problems, not only with that, Jack, is the fact that the plant owners will designate what employee uses the stamp.
Well, mind you, they're your own members. They should know what's contaminated meat. Or are they your own members?
No, they're not. No,
They're not members of our union.
Oh, they're not members of your union.
In some plants, they're not unionized at all.
Well, that's a tough one. You're getting a horrified public response?
Well, unfortunately, it's starting to build up, but my gosh, the complacency, I don't think the people are really are aware of the ramifications, the potential of tainted meat coming on the market.
Well, we don't get, do we get tainted meat on the market? I can remember some really filthy cases in Quebec where they were selling, but that was Quebec again.
But because
Alberta.
of that, though...
Alberta, have you had contaminated
Yes,
meat?
October they had a very large break of contaminated meat in Calgary, right in Calgary.
British Columbia, I can't remember any stories in recent years on contaminated meat.
But then you see, again, that only proves our point. That only proves that the inspection system that we've had in place over the years has been very effective. And the incident in Quebec was what brought about bitter inspection because of that problem that came up in there.
Okay, time for some calls to the P.S.A.C. guys who say the federal government in a brutal, cold-blooded move is opening the door to the chance of tainted meat on the counters in British Columbia, right?
Right on.
After the break. Take some calls. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning to your inspectors. I would, I think, agree with their stand. I believe that the plants are there really only for production, and they're not at all interested in quality control. And I would also say I think I would keep the inspectors on and look at the level of inspection at the veterinarian level, how many they've got here in the high price level. And are they doing their job?
Does he know something I don't know?
I don't know.
What do you mean veterinarians in the high price level?
Well, they know what I'm talking about, I'm afraid.
Do you?
Well, we're not here to take shots at the veterinarians.
Oh, feel free. Take a cheap shot at the vets.
That's okay. I'm not picking on them either, but I think the inspectors do their job properly, and I would hate to see the use of the official seals by...
Mind you, I do not accept that the big and the good meat packing plants are going out of their way to... give us contaminated meat.
Well,
Neither do you.
Contaminated meat, as long as you didn't know about it, old boy, but they're not going to worry too much. They want to push that out the door and get the old profits in. Hey, let's face it, we may not do much when we're on the job, but God help you if we're not on the job. Thank you very much.
Are you an inspector?
No. I'm not an inspector, sir.
You're not a vet either, are you?
No, I'm not a vet, but many years ago,
Okay, enough is enough. Go ahead, please.
Hello?
Yes.
Am I number 3?
Yep.
Thank you, Jack. I'm a retired meat man, and I'm strongly in favor of HOA, that's Health of Animals Inspection. I'll give you one prime example. In Ottawa, remember, I was in charge of a distribution plant, supplying 110 larger stores, and on one occasion we were offered boneless beef at a very attractive price, frozen boneless beef. By checking into it, I was fortunate enough to discover that they were using dead animals, boning out dead animals, and it wasn't a health-inspected plant. Fortunately, we were able to get HOA on the track. And
how long ago was that?
Beg pardon?
How long ago was that?
It was 1959.
That's a long while ago. Surely to God.
Make a difference, Jack. I remember when Fletcher's here in Vancouver
No, I don't want to get into old local stories, but that's a good one. that one you told me. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack, this motherhood bit sounds wonderful, but I can't believe that any plant is going to deliberately turn out contaminated meat. They are the ones that would be financially responsible when they're sued. They could be sued right out of existence. These government inspectors, in most cases, are a bloody nuisance.
Okay.
I also agree with you. I don't think they're going to do it on purpose, but when you take a highly qualified, trained federal meat inspector out of his job and put an individual in there that has had no training, our inspectors, they have to take examinations post-mortem, whatever. Plant personnel, he is in there for one purpose. Maybe he's a meat cutter, whatever he is. He is not there properly trained to identify contaminated, tainted, diseased meat.
Go ahead from Kelowna.
Yes, I'd just like to ask, how many deaths or serious illnesses is it going to take for our government to realize that meat inspection is one of the most important things that they could have?
Well, that's a good point, ma'am.
Yeah, well, I think one of the main reasons why we're here on this show is to try and stop a program that could quite possibly bring about some disaster like that, and I agree with you.
Go ahead, please.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
I think the question that needs to be asked here is, under the current standards, what percentage of the meat does not make the grade?
Good question.
Well, that's a hard one. I think you'd have to, the type of operation, the age of the plant. The older plants have sanitation problems, definitely, but it's a very difficult question to answer.
No, but he's saying how much meat will a meat inspector condemn in a plant? Maybe once in 6 months? Once?
Oh, no.
On
an ongoing daily basis that is condemned.
I mean, and meat is condemned every day somewhere or other.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at the potential.
Very high, sir.
Very high potential. Go ahead, please.
These guys are quite right. I had a friend here that worked in a fish plant in Vancouver. And the regulations stated that if there was a sore or a boil in a fish, that fish was to be dumped. But when the inspectors weren't around, they would cut that boil or the sore out and dump the boil, and they would use the fish, because the inspectors only came around on spot checks.
Do you inspect fish too in fish plants?
No, but I agree with this gentleman, and I hate to use cliches, but it's like putting the fox in charge of the chickens in this area.
Some truth in that. Go ahead, please.
Gentlemen, how do you suppose our pioneers that shaped this country of ours got...
Oh, away with you. We're not living in pioneer days. What a nit. Goodness gracious me. You want to go back to dry outside latrines, for God's sake? Go ahead, please.
Hello. I work in a processing
plant,
and what the inspectors are saying is true. If people had an idea what goes on when an inspector isn't around, and we're told by management what to do. If the inspectors were there at the time, we would have to put these birds aside, right? But when the inspector's not there, we're told to rush through our processing and our orders quickly, for the inspector doesn't see this. So what they're trying to say makes that we've got to have them there. I don't eat what I go ahead and do at work. I wouldn't even touch it.
You don't touch the stuff that comes out of your own plant.
That's right.
Well, I shouldn't tell this story, but I suppose I should. One of my daughter's friends became one of these people who checked the contents of hot dogs.
Oh, yeah.
We're very cautious about hot dogs, I'll tell you. Where was it going? Assayas? Hold on, please. 44 from Assayas. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, gentlemen.
That's you, ma'am.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Yeah.
Morning.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. First is, if the meat inspectors and their stamps are not available in their use for the public to receive the packages of meat and meat byproducts that are processed, such as sausages, wieners, bacon, whatever, these packages, when they reach the retail outlets and the general public purchases them, these packages have an outdate stamped on them that says it's best used before X date, whatever that may be. Now, if this meat possibly is tainted or possibly was not inspected correctly or inspected at all, can the general public begin to even consider believing these stamped outdates on the packages?
Good question.
Well, to be honest with you, Madam, our concern is that right now under the inspection, that meat that is now marked, inspected by inspectors is indeed done so in a lot of cases. Under the new program, no. You're right. You're absolutely right in your concern is the fact that that may not have been inspected and passed in the first place. So what date is marked on it is immaterial.
All right, question for me. Who puts the date on the best used by?
Well, that would be the plant.
The plant does that after it's inspected.
That's right. Yeah.
Good point, ma'am. One more short segment with the meat inspectors after the break. Are you from Newfoundland?
Yes, I'm Newfoundland.
Do you have any inspection plants at all in Newfoundland?
Oh, yes, they have plants that are inspected.
Funny accent, isn't it? Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster.
Morning.
I'm a retail meat cutter and presently working at a local chain store. And I'd like to know why it is when we've got a pork special, a big pork special, say on pork butts or picnics, they'll come in and they just look terrible. They're sour. The meat manager will tell us to put it out anyways. Another thing is I'd like to know, well, not really. You know, the customers, they think they're getting a good quality product, but there's no real protection for them. When we receive our fish that's frozen, we bring in frozen pork or something, it's left out in the warehouse, it's defrosted back there under, without any refrigeration, it's going out, there's probably bacteria buildup on it, and there really isn't any really protection because there's a lot of poor practices going around.
You're not talking about poor practices in the warehouses of chain stores?
I'm talking about the chain store level. They may have inspectors at the warehouse.
Do you have inspectors in warehouses?
Not under agriculture, consumer affairs, and then we do have, they are our members, the inspectors of consumer affairs, and the fisheries inspectors are members of the public service alliance.
And are they all in different branches
Yes.
of government?
Yes.
Why don't they have all inspectors under one roof?
Don't ask me to explain how the government operates.
And you're quite concerned about this, are you, retail meat cutter?
I sure am, because
Well,
I know at the level.
What grade of pork would that be that put out these pork butts that you say smell sour?
Well, they aren't really graded. They're only stamped with
Canada approved
approval on it. There isn't a grade 1, 2, or 3 or anything. That's basically for beef.
Yeah.
When the pork comes in, I look at it. I can feel it. You can feel it's tacky. It's a little slimy. It's shiny. You can tell it's sour. But because we're under this thing of cutting a certain gross profit, we're told put it out. We don't have time to send it back because we need the product on the premises, like right now.
Thanks for your good news, caller.
I'd like to just comment on what he said, if you don't mind, Jack, is that that's one of the key concerns that we have, is that some of the smaller plants, even prior to this, have had spot checking, and you can see what can happen there.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I'd just like to say that it's interesting that you have a medical program and the meat packers, because if these inspectors are dismissed, you're certainly going to need the...
No inspectors are being dismissed. This is one of the anomalies about this program.
Oh, they're not.
You don't anticipate any cut downs in staff.
No, but they're
cutting down your duties.
I think
use the stamp by the stamp inspector, so these employees of the companies are going to be stamping this meat. And I was just wondering about this poultry. Salmonella infection is a very danger that we're all warned about. Not correctly cooked or thawed out and things like that. Is this going to be affected by these employees who are using these stamps rather than the...
Would it?
Well, I would say yes, because if the consumer isn't getting an actual fresh product from the packing house, the process is that much further ahead to...
But you see, you leave me with this anomaly. They're not laying anybody off.
Well, let me explain it to you, Jack.
Explain that to me before we
Let me explain to you. Right now, none of our members are going to lose their jobs. The problem is, with this program coming in, over the next number of years, as people retire and leave for other reasons, those positions may not be filled. So you will see a watering down and a deterioration of the level of inspection.
The old attrition caper.
Yes.
But further to that, Jack, there also is a very large increase in production and the meatpacking processing through population or whatever. I think the figures are, I think production's up about 40%, and they're not hiring any more inspectors.
Who should I have on to balance this program? And don't tell me Eugene Whelan.
That's the guy I'd like to see. He is, he's insulated himself from the
Maybe he
situation.
is the guy.
You better believe it.
Whelan, but I need the deputy minister or somebody.
J.P. Connell, we've already talked to him and received no cooperation, no action whatsoever.
Will you leave me a copy of that memo you read on the air?
Certainly.
My thanks to Mr. Coates, Fred J. Coates, and Albert Burke. Can I tell a story about your weight?
Yeah, you can.
Eh?
Indeed you can.
No, I won't. No.
Thank you, Jack.
Now, next we're going to deal with Gerald M. Green from the Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Society, who's going to tell us this very interesting story about, I want to use his own quote. Where's his own quote? Where's his own quote? Can't find it. Oh, yeah. In a free society, you shouldn't be able to drag someone off the street, force them to dine at your table, and then send them a bill for the meal. He's talking about patients in mental institutions and other similar places. After the break. If you have a relative, or if you have been in Riverview, for instance, or provincial mental hospitals of any kind, you know perfectly well that until last August you had to pay a daily charge. Then there was a court case, the charge was dropped. And it would seem our dear old friends in Victoria are thinking about putting the charge back. So we're going to take this up with Gerald Green from the Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Society. Give me the simple facts in the case in which you were given a decision which made the government stop billing mental patients for their involuntary care. Am I right?
That's correct, Jack. A client of mine who was a protesting involuntary patient at Riverview was billed month to month on a regular basis with this daily hospital charge. And because she was very conscious and aware of her surroundings and very articulate, she had no sense of why she should have to pay this charge, given that she didn't want to be where she was.
Right.
So she came to me and asked whether she had to pay, and I looked at some law, and I told her the law is unclear. It's not as clear as the government might like it to be. And morally, clearly you shouldn't have to pay. It's absurd that you should have to pay. So why don't you tell the government to go fly a kite? And she did, and they sued her, and they claimed something on the order of $6,000 or $7,000 in built-up daily charges, and the government lost. His Honor Judge McTaggart in New Westminster County Court said that the law was not clear, that it didn't give the government the right to collect these charges, in the case of a protesting involuntary patient. And the government accordingly stopped billing for a period of months, and now they're talking about not only starting to bill again by changing the law to legalize what was formerly illegal, but also going after all the people that didn't have to pay during the time that the government was deciding what to do.
Well, that, of course, as of this very moment, because of the decision you got from Judge McTaggart, they can't do that.
That's right.
They've got to change the law. How would they change? Which law would they change for that?
They'd change the Mental Health Act. The Mental Health Act now just does not say that a patient must pay charges. It says that if there's someone who's liable to pay charges, that person shall pay them at a rate prescribed by the cabinet. But it doesn't say that any particular patient must pay. And why doesn't it say that? Well, probably because everybody who's in a hospital under the Mental Health Act is an involuntary patient in some sense or other. There is a type of status called informal, being an informal patient. That's where you come to the hospital and say, I want care, and then they put you away. Then they hold you. You're not free, even in the case of an informal patient, to walk out.
Even an informal patient becomes an involuntary patient.
Well, informal is a term used in the Mental Health Act to describe the status that you fall into when you come to an institution looking for treatment, and the institution accepts you and then says, now you're going to be treated, and you're going to be treated for as long as we want to treat you.
Well, I compliment you and VCLA, Vancouver Community Legal Assistance, on your victory. But let me think about it for a minute. You state quite clearly that the morality of it is bad. You had a wonderful quote which I like. In a free society, you shouldn't be able to drag someone off the street, force them to dine at your table, and then send them a bill for the meal. But supposing the only money that person is getting is money from the state, should that person be allowed to build up, forgive the expression, an estate from money for the state, or should they, like people in other institutions, sign over their pension checks?
The reason the state is giving these people money is to meet their basic human needs, things like food, clothing, and shelter. Now, if you're telling me that a person who is put into an institution and has drugs put into his body that he doesn't want and is held like a prisoner, even though the sign on the wall says hospital rather than jail. If you're telling me that the cost of those drugs and of that forced care is a necessity of life that should come out of the guy's pension, I say to you that you're wrong.
I surrender. I withdraw forthwith. For instance, if I get nailed for some crime which I have committed and went to Ocala, do I get charged?
Well, of course you don't.
The cost.
Of course you don't. Of course you don't pay for the upkeep of Ocala, except insofar as you're a taxpayer and we all pay.
And your position, your legal position and your own personal position is that mental patients should be paid for by the state. Care must be paid for by the state.
If the state forces them to undergo care, surely the state should pay. Now remember, when you're talking about someone who's held at Ocala, you're talking about someone who's broken the law. Now, mental patients have not broken the law. They are people who fall into a state where they're thought to be in need of care, whether they want it or not. Very different thing.
What about these old folks who, I always feel terrible, I used to remember years ago, maybe not that many years ago, you'd have two old people, right, both drawing their pensions. One would go out to the Riverview, what that old age, the old age folks?
Valley View.
Valley View. And the pension would be taken and signed over to Valley View, right? Are you aware of that?
I believe that that has happened from time to time.
And the other half of the 50-year-old marriage is left trying to live on one pension, right? So what do you now recommend? Oh, in your case, your particular case, did they actually issue a lawsuit against her for the money?
Oh yeah, this woman got sued.
Because she had money?
She got
or
sued.
They thought she had money?
She got sued because they thought she had money. Yes, that's right. If she had obviously been indigent, they wouldn't have wasted their time suing her.
But even if she'd been indigent on a pension, would they have taken the pension check away less the comfort money?
I think that they would have, in a subtle way, coerced her into signing over the check. Now, she still probably would have got her comfort money if she were otherwise entitled to it. But I think her pension would have taken wing into the coffers of the provincial government.
So do I. The user fee when this happened, have you any idea how many families were paying, or many people were paying $11.50 a day until last August?
Well, I don't know the numbers of people that were paying, but I noticed that in the Sun article the other day, they talk about the government realizing $2.7 million a year from these daily charges. That's a lot of money.
What is the new charge that's anticipated per day if they amend the Mental Health Act and say you pay?
Well, the latest maximum per diem is $12.75 a day. I don't know what plans the government may have in the future as to the fixing.
Do you happen to know at all whether or not this applies to halfway houses, community boarding homes, and adult care facilities?
It's possible to go into a mental institution and then to be released from that institution into a community-based facility. If you are released by a device known as extended leave under the Mental Health Act, a very commonly used procedure.
You're still a mental patient.
You're still a mental patient. You're still legally in the institution and still could legally be charged.
Despite all your moral rectitude, there's still a little bit of a contradiction there in that if I'm an old person, which I am, go into chronic care, I got to pay them my, what is it, 12? Well, it's $6.50, but it's up now. A day, haven't I? For my care.
That's right.
Was that not much the same thing?
The difference really, I think, is that you're talking about non-consenting, protesting individuals. Wherever there's consent, you don't have the status of an involuntary patient. Now, if I want something and I consent to having it, I see no moral problem with asking me to pay for it.
Like a hospital patient.
That's right. But if somebody puts me somewhere that I don't want to be and puts things into my body that I don't want in there, and then says, not only am I going to keep you here and do this to you, but you've got to pay for it, to me that is morally outrageous.
Good point, I must tell you. Well, we'll take some calls on this subject to Gerald M. Green and talk a little bit about the VCLA too after the break. Green from the Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Society, who fought and won the case for the woman who was stubborn enough and smart enough to say no when they tried to bill her how much money?
At the time the suit was brought, it was $6,000 some odd dollars. It built up to almost $8,000 before the case was heard.
Now, how would you describe the tactics of the government in billing? How many of the other people paid?
Well, you get a bill in the mail. It's on government letterhead. It says, you shall pay. What do? Do you think, maybe I don't have to pay? Of course you don't.
You don't.
You put your check in the mail, or you sit back waiting fearfully for the government to do something to you. Now, for years and years and years, people did exactly that. They got these very official-looking bills for a charge that it turns out was illegal, and they paid them. Those of them who could paid. We're talking here about a massive amount of money that was paid over by people who were not legally obligated to
For
pay
how
it.
many years?
I wish I knew, but unfortunately the government has all the information on this
Oh, well,
subject.
I know from my own memory that it's many, many years. Maybe it might amount to $20 or $30 million obtained by bluffing.
That's one way to look at it, and a correct way, I think. Now, why is the government, instead of talking about the wrong that they did in the past by charging all this money and collecting it when they didn't have the right to, why are they talking about billing in the future and going back into the past and getting more money out of the people?
What do you mean go back into the past? They're not going to try and, they can't retroactively change the law to pick up all that money back, can they?
Well, they seem to think that they can. As I read in the Vancouver Sun, for the period of time when the government was trying to decide what to do about this court case and they were not billing people, they lost some money. And now, according to the Sun article and the spokesman of the Minister of Health, the government is thinking about figuring out how to get back the money that they lost while they were obeying the law, as it were.
What is your advice, therefore, to anyone who, prior to a change in the law, is harassed or harried to pay a bill for themselves or a relative in a mental institution of any kind?
I would advise them to seek legal advice before they pay any more money and see what happens.
Do they have to seek legal advice now? Can't they, on the basis of your decision from Judgment Taggart, just say, no, go jump in the lake?
They can always say no and put the government to its proof that it is entitled to the money. And that would be a wise thing to do if they don't want to go out and
I wonder,
have to pay a legal fee.
this is an unfair remark, but I'll make it. I wonder if they knew all these years when they were billing that it was not a proper charge because of the fact that they didn't even appeal the case, did they?
They didn't appeal the case. As to whether they knew, I'm not claiming that they did.
No.
The law is rather sloppily drafted, in my opinion.
As most laws seem to be.
And I don't think that they knowingly set out to take money from people that they knew they weren't entitled
I
to.
remember cases where they've sued the estates of people who died in Riverview. Did you come across any of these?
I personally haven't, but it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah. I've got to stick in your model position, otherwise I'll begin to think, well, people with money, you know. However, no, I'll take your position. It's the only decent one to take. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. I was just wondering, I'd like to ask Gerald there, on some of these involuntary cases, do they have to sign some kind of consent forms, or are they not able to sign some consent form for these billing notices?
Are you talking about consent for billing, or are you talking about consent for treatment?
Consent for billing, let's say, and treatment also.
Well, I think the practice of the government up to now has simply been to rely on the provision of the law that said they could charge, that they could collect. And so the government has not required people to sign a contract thinking that they had an ample authority in the statute to collect. Now it turns out, of course, that they don't have the authority, and maybe one of the devices the government will use is to have people sign some kind of a consent to be billed at the time of admission.
Aren't these people kind of unstable, or they're not able to think for themselves if they're mental in the first place, or, you know, something like this? Or
People who get put into mental institutions are probably involved in some kind of a problem in living, which may render them more or less able to function. But not everybody who gets put into a mental institution lacks the ability in law to make business decisions.
Oh, I see.
In fact, probably most people have not been deprived of that ability, and they could consent or withhold consent on their own.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to cut him off, but I did it. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack. Good morning, Mr. Green. I have 2 points I want to make. First of all, is there any connection, or can you make any connections between this and the whole move for extra billing that seems to be going on in this province? And the second point is that I just wanted to make the point that in terms of welfare recipients, for example, when they are committed to Riverview, they lose their welfare payments with the exception of the $50 comfort money each month. And so in a sense, that money that would normally go to them when they're in the community would, in a sense, go back to the government and not be paid to them.
On the first point, I don't know of any connection. On the second point, it is a fact that people who are drawing social assistance when they are outside of institutional care lose all but 40 or 50 bucks a month of that assistance. So it's not as if they can keep drawing the check and building up a sum of money. But there are pensioners whose entitlement to benefits is not dependent on whether they're in or out of the institution. And what I was suggesting earlier is that those pensioners may be having their pension funds grabbed or coercively removed from them in some way, maybe subtle, maybe not so subtle, to pay these daily hospital charges.
Yeah, we've got to check that out. I'm sure they made the old age pensioners sign the pension checks in Riverview. Sure of it.
Oh, well, I have one particular client who, on a regular monthly basis, was asked to sign his check over without any explanation of why.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was just wondering, I just have one question for Mr. Green. I wonder if he's ever yet met one mental patient who really and truly admitted he did need help.
Oh, that's a stupid question.
Well, I
That
don't think
really is a stupid question. And I will not, no, that just annoys me. One mental patient who admitted. Depends on his mental illness and his condition.
By the way, Jack, the answer to the question is yes.
Of course you have. So have I met. I've met people who have been wrongly held in mental institutions and wrongly sent for psychiatric examination as a convenience. Go ahead, please.
Hi, I have a question for you. First of all, I'd like to state that as a healthcare worker, the health system is already presently overloaded. And if we don't charge mental patients for basic medical care, then it also has implications on long-term care, older patients that are, institutionalized for various reasons. And already we are cut to the minimum. I mean, what implications do you see?
Yeah, you put the question in a much better form than I did earlier. What are the implications of the question of long-term care and those other things on question of costs?
On the issue of costs, why not stop beating up on the involuntary patients? There are a lot of people who are getting treatment on a consensual basis who would be willing to pay perhaps a lot more than they're paying now. Why not ask them to pay something that more fairly corresponds with the true cost of the care they're getting? Just a thought. There you're not on the same weak moral ground as dragging someone in and saying, you pay, and if you stop paying, we're going to blame you for the fiscal problems in the healthcare system.
Well, you proved anyway that the government was wrong, was in fact, as it turned out, had been running, whether they knew it or not, a big bluff. Right? Whether they knew it or not.
Whether they knew it or not.
They had been running a big bluff.
They were running a bluff. People were thinking they had to do something that they really didn't have to do and were doing it.
Go ahead from Victoria.
Hello, Jack. Mr. Green, I have one statement, and I'll end up with a question. The hard-working people of around in Victoria here, the Miami of Canada, some of them that have the mental problems, they're being billed, as you say, but yet it's a known factor among the street people around here that when you blow into Victoria and you're down your luck, that you can check into one place here in Victoria, and upon getting out after 2 weeks of being fed and relaxed,
What are you talking about?
you check into a hotel.
Check into a hotel?
That's right.
What kind of hotel?
That's a little sleazy hotel.
Doesn't make any sense. Go ahead from Aldergrove.
Good morning. I'm quite intrigued by the aspect in this of our provincial government. The minute they think things don't suit them, or should I say laws don't suit them, they try to change the laws. That's quite a disgusting procedure. And I'd also like to know if Mr. Green is getting any help from Dr. Friedman in this.
Doesn't need it, do you?
Thank you.
Or do you? Do you?
The tactic of the government in changing the law is one that I hope will become a lot less common now that we've got a thing called the Charter of Rights. If the government can change the law without violating what are now considered to be our fundamental rights as Canadians, then more power to them. But they may have a little more trouble using this tactic now than they did a couple or 3 years ago.
Interesting question. This woman obviously had money, or they wouldn't have sued her, right?
Yes.
Or they thought she had money. Did Vancouver, of course, you're not legal aid, Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Society, are you?
Vancouver Community Legal Assistance is a non-profit private society that gets some money from the legal aid scheme and some money from the Law Foundation.
So you go for what you think, in this case, basic injustice.
That's right. We work for no fee. I'm a salaried staff lawyer. I have no financial interest in the outcome of this case.
Yeah, that's good. In other words, and even though she had money, you would take that case because you felt it was in the public interest.
She was standing up for a lot of people who had less money than she did. I can assure you that our board of directors wrestled with this issue before we decided to take the case on.
Well, congratulations for taking it on, because the least you've done is force the government to face the facts of life and come out front and center and explain what happens to people who are going to the review, if they're going to change the law, and in what way they're going to change the law. Then you can challenge it all over again. My thanks to Gerald M. Green of the Vancouver Community Legal Assistance Society, and I'll be back after the break. What's in store for 84 in British Columbia? Monday we have a special program with 8 of the leading figures in the province of British Columbia, whom I shall question about what lies in the year ahead. Labour unrest, economy, inflation, mortgages, housing, the lot. Special on the economy on Webster on Monday at 9 a.m. precisely. I hope that did not disturb you, my little outburst.
No.
Go ahead from Cranbrook. Go ahead from Cranbrook. Oh, 4. Oh, sorry. Kicking through the pee holes of the... peeping through the keyholes. That was a Freudian slip.
In Europe, the lotteries have been a long, long time. They haven't destroyed the moral fiber. We'll talk about that.
In Amsterdam,
we'll talk about
they have. In Amsterdam, but that's...
Oh, yeah, that's not even Holland. That's,
right.
You threw me off there about Amsterdam.
Sure I
no,
did.
there is a law there.
My plan is to throw you off all morning.
No matter how remote, at the end of this week, your life could be changed. No matter how remote, it's worth the thrill. If you spend money that you should spend on food, on groceries, don't do it. And don't think that spending $50 is going to make your chances any better, because it isn't. So let's hope it's 1.
Okay.
I couldn't stand another week of this.